her truth is no longer to walk my path, who the hell am I to say, no, I'm sorry, you need to compromise the rest of your life, right? Because you signed a piece of paper 10 years ago that says you're not allowed to go and walk your truth.
Yeah.
Sorry, that doesn't work for me.
For the people who follow you, they'll know that there was a wedding planned. Unfortunately, you were unable to make that wedding. You were too busy with the Queen, doing something with her, I hear. So what's the plans around that? I mean, have you put another date in the diary? Is this something that's been scheduled? Are you...
To quote a previous phrase that worked out quite well, it'll happen when it's ready. Yeah. Yes, I mean, right now she's busy with college. You know, we're looking at obviously moving out of England. And we've talked about it a lot. And one thing to know is that, and people that listen to my straight talk on relationships will understand this, I'm not attached to marriage. In fact, I'm actually against marriage in the traditional sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't believe that an institution, if you do your history on marriage, which most people don't, they just wake up and have this bubble appear around them as an expectation that, oh, you date for a while, you find someone, you like them, you make the decision, this is the one, and then you go sign a piece of paper that says you're not allowed to leave for the rest of your life. If they do the history as to where that model came from, they'll understand in a heartbeat why it's so dysfunctional when it comes to unconditional love. It's not designed to support that. No. So, and a lot of people are more committed to the relationship, and the institution of that than the people on the ship. Yeah. Right? And why? Because, don't get me started. Go listen to my straight talk. So, I don't need a piece of paper signed by somebody who's not allowed to have sex, right, to tell me that I'm willing to spend the rest of my life with someone or not. But from my side, I'm about walking my truth. Now, right now, I'm honored the fact that I get to walk my truth alongside my Queen, and her truth happens to be walking alongside me. But you evolve and you become different people. And if in 10 years right now she's evolved with the fact that her truth is no longer to walk my path, who the hell am I to say, no, I'm sorry, you need to compromise the rest of your life, right? Because you signed a piece of paper 10 years ago that says you're not allowed to go and walk your truth. Yeah. Sorry, that doesn't work for me. Right. I have friends that have high-level consciousness levels of relationships that they end up having divorced in a very mature way, where it's almost a celebration of the time that they've had. Yeah. And you see that in funerals. Some people can't deal with funerals because they're in this sense of loss, and they feel that they've been abandoned, or they feel that the person's actually let them down by dying, or they just can't deal with the grief, or whatever it may be. And you have others that turn it into a celebration of their life and honor the fact that the time that they spent, and we're grateful for it. So I see relationships in the same way. And if there's kids involved, you go back to the Egyptians. They had if there's kids involved, you don't make the mistake, which is what traditional relationships do, of co-mingling two different agreements. One is cohabiting, one is co-parenting. The two are different.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and if you understand that, if you put them together in something called marriage, right, and you say, okay, cohabiting is co-parenting, and therefore you can't separate the two, what do you see? You see people in divorces use kids as political pawns in chess games to hurt people. But hang on, we're going to enter into a relationship where we're going to have children. We've entered into a co-parenting relationship for at least the next 20 years, or so. Yeah. And so as a result of that's a separate agreement. Now, if we decide that we're no longer going to be cohabiting, we're no longer having an intimate relationship, that's a separate field. But we have a mature way, a respectful way of honoring our co-parenting obligations for the kids. So I can't split up because of the kids. Well, no, what you're saying is I want to have kids grow up in a dysfunctional, loveless relationship because I don't know how to deal with the co-parenting side separately from the cohabiting side. And and that's just dysfunction, and it's dysfunction because of the way traditional relationships and marriage have been put together, under the guise of economic stability, political alliances, and all the history, if you do it behind that. I mean, romantic love didn't exist as a concept for marriage 150 years ago. Yeah.
When you think about it like that, it's just almost baffling when you try and think about how we see things now, the way the world is going.
Step into my common sense corner for a second and have the conversation. So now it's not licensed to not follow through on commitments, because the flip side to that is that as soon as the going gets tough, I'm out of there. Well, that's not. That's like saying I don't want to stay in the gym because my muscles hurt. Yeah. Well, no, relationships are a crucible of growth. Now, if you want to leave a relationship because you can't handle the lessons that it's providing to you to be able to step up and grow through, like not being egocentric, selfish, or imposing your expectations and judgments on others, or your insistence that they make you happy and all that crap, right, that you have to learn and grow and evolve to. Yeah, but if you live in a relationship because it's time. You know, sometimes you live in a house for a number of years. There's nothing wrong with a house, but it's time to move house. Yeah, because you've outgrown that level of property. Right? So, on a relationship context, sometimes your truth is just to walk a different path. And if you have a high level consciousness relationship with somebody on the same level, they'll understand that. Yeah, the last thing I would want to do is have Thea compromise her truth because wants to be with me. Yeah, and we come from a place of non-ownership. Yeah, I don't know if people figured it out, but they banned slavery many hundred years ago in most countries. So I don't own Thea. I have no rights over what she should or shouldn't do. And if you want to look at jealousy or something like that, it's simple. Jealousy is a present time fear of a future loss. And the premise, the fundamental belief that's driving it is that you think you have the fundamental right over who should or shouldn't love you.
Yes.
Plus, break it down, guys.
Yeah.
When you get over that, you can celebrate someone. If they want to go do whatever they want to do and it's their truth or it's their lesson that they need to learn at the time, then bang. And Thea and I certainly had our lessons during the relationship. And again, you got two indigos together. They're like two magnets. We have a north and south pole, and when the opposite poles are together, we're that strong. But when the same poles start getting, there's a lot of butting heads, and that's okay. It's not about having this perfect fairy tale relationship. It's about seeing it as a crucible for growth, so we can be custodians or midwives to each other's dreams, and allow us to support each other or catch ourselves when we're falling off track. Or call each other on a shit. The strongest skill set that you can actually have in a relationship is the ability to repair breakdown. It's the ability to bounce back from arguments. The ability to, come back to the table with your ego out of the way and say sorry. Not
dwell on something for 6 months, 6 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah, because of that. So you master that because you're all going to have breakdowns, and you're far further down the road than most people. Who would have a concept of thinking relationships are something that's meant to make me happy.
Yes. Okay, so that all makes perfect sense from an intellectual level. Now I know that personally when I've been in situations where this is questioned, or I'm tested as to whether I really perceive myself to be owning my partner or not, I'm caught in a bind. There's conflicts inside. A part of me knows that there is no ownership and we're just blessed to spend the time together with each other, and that's fine. But then the other part of me has that wanting, that fear of loss, let's call it, that inevitably comes from scarcity. So my question is this a way of being and a way of thinking that you've just embodied naturally from being a child, or is this something whereas you previously had the cultural understanding that we do of marriage and something happened along the way to change this, or was this a process that you went through? Kind of how do you...
No, understood. No, I think it's very rare to grow up in society and not be plugged into the matrix of the, let's call it the old model. To quote, my relationship coach, Rory Kilmartin. And if you have any kind of sense of personal growth and spiritual growth, you'll understand that the traditional model of relationships is fundamentally flawed, and you only have to look at statistics to be able to see that. And again, it's never designed to support unconditional love. It's designed for ownership, control, rules, and the expectation that you should fulfill a certain role. And that's not a game I want to play.
Free labor.
So in a sense, but for me, it was an evolving process. I've certainly been a complete dick in many of my relationships. Growing up, most people are egotistical. Certainly in the first part of life, you have to be. As babies aren't egotistical, they die. They say, "Oh no, I'm not going to cry at 2 a.m. because I've got colic because I don't want to wake mum and dad." No, that doesn't happen, right? But you grow up and mature emotionally, hopefully, as you get older. And you start to notice, if you've got some sensory acuity and you grow out of your own ego and you realize life isn't all about you, and you start getting the feedback from life, you start noticing things. And looking at relationships specifically, I started to really have a passion for wanting to embrace, learn, and go on a pathway of figuring out something that clearly wasn't working in society. If you look at divorce rates, you look at satisfaction rates, how many marriages do you know that are happier 10, 15, 20 years down the line than the day they walk down the aisle? A very small percent.
Struggling.
As a small percent. That doesn't say it doesn't happen. Doesn't say you don't get 3 cherries in a row sometimes in Vegas. If you put enough quarters in the slot. but it's not the norm. Now, for most people, the model doesn't support a fundamental basis for personal fulfillment. And so it was a process that I went through, and if you're not looking for it, then you're just going to fall into being plugged into the old model. So to answer your question, to come back to how does that affect you, emotionally versus intellectually? One has to understand that if I feel that my partner is potentially leaving or doing something that listen to the language, I vote on invalidates my sense of self. What's essentially being triggered is the primary fear. Because if they really love me and I was good enough, they wouldn't go and do that. That's the belief. It's a complete lie. It's a rule that you made up, and it's all there to try to justify the primary fear, or act as a bit of a circuit breaker to prevent it from, so it's their fault. Yeah. So now I'm going to project blame, I'm going to project judgment, rather than realize that, hang on, we're all on our own journey of learning lessons. Sometimes couples have to break up through some act of, let's call it transgression, whether it's rules-based transgression or whatever it may be, infidelity, or going to spend all the family fortune on gambling, or whatever it is. Sometimes people have to do that to learn their own lessons. And they have to realize that, hang on a minute, what I really should have done was this. Because you're not meant to get 100% on the exam. If you do, you're in the wrong class. Yeah, so we have to have space to screw up so that we can learn to make better choices. Now, if you continue to screw up and continue to make the choices and continue to spend the family fortune on gambling, or mistreat the kids or go and have an affair or whatever it may be, then the other person has the right to make a choice as to whether they want to be with the person that isn't learning. But they don't have the right to take away that person's lesson. Because that's that person's lesson. Why? Because we all have free will. You come up and call me an asshole, guess what? You've got absolutely every right to do so. Why? Because you were born with, and you have every right to something called free will. And if you want to choose or exercise your free will to use that to call me an asshole, that's your free will. Right? Why would I take that personally? Now, I have free will, which means I have the right to choose whether I want to respond and call you an asshole back, or whether I want to see the fact that here's some guy who's clearly so stressed out of his head that he's projecting anger onto the whole world. Or it may be a case of I've done something that a blind spot that you want to bring up to my attention. If I think I've transgressed you, I'll apologize. So from that perspective, it's it's all about understanding how to raise your level of consciousness, how to raise your perspective, and that's not easy. It's a journey. Some people, it's a few lifetimes. We're not all born enlightened or experts. Nor we're meant to be. We're in school. If you pass all the exams, there's no longer need to be here in Earth School. And relationships offer a very great fundamental environment, as I said, a crucible for learning that gives you lessons you just don't get elsewhere. So, and that's where it's sometimes more painful to be able to grow through that. It's easy to not judge your kids for saying they hate you because you won't give them an ice cream. But for your partner to go out and sleep with somebody, right? Okay, put that in class and see how you deal with it. That's a whole different game. So, again, it's emotional maturity, and you get to choose whether or not you want to stay, or you want to forgive, or you want to understand. But to push their model on, I feel violated, and therefore, subtext, to avoid the fear I'm not enough, I'm going to project it onto you and make it your fault, therefore I can stand without having feel that I'm not good enough and that's why you did it, is a path very few people get to take. They're not conscious of. So being able to learn through that is just part of the game. Again, if your partner's dropping their underwear on the floor in the bedroom and won't pick it up, you've got no right to tell them to pick it up. You can ask them, you can explain to them that it's upsetting for you, and you'd feel a lot more considered if they did tidy up after themselves, but you've got no right to make them do it. You have every right to choose not to live with a messy pig. Right? That's your choice. If that's who they are, it's who they are. And if you can make a decision that they're not willing to do that, then you can choose what that means to you and what to do about it. But you don't get to change them.
And this is your famous metaphor about the art gallery. You can't tell them what paintings to put on the wall, but you can walk into another room and take a look at what you want to take a look at. And
Perfect.
I think for this is interesting, because in one of our earlier conversations, I asked you what was the hardest challenge. The biggest challenge you would face on a day-to-day basis, and relationships was that area. And I think that it feeds nicely into this.
It's the best schoolhouse.
Yeah, yeah, clearly.
It can give you the one area where you can experience the most joy and also the most pain.
Yeah.
And that makes it a brilliant environment to learn and grow.